But you have systematically dismantled the Department of Homeland Security, put your own interests above the department, and violated the law. You are making America less safe. So rather than sitting here and wasting your time and ours with more corruption, lies, and lawlessness, I call on you to resign. Do a real service to the country and just resign. That is, if President Trump doesn't fire you first. I yield back.
So Kristi Noem has been in a lot of hot water lately. First of all, Trump is telling all his, people that are closest to him that Kristi Noem is about to get the boot. She's getting the boot for two main reasons. The first being the way the detention centers and the pace the detention centers are being built. She hasn't been spending the money from the big, beautiful bill. Scott Benson, Stephen Miller, the chief of staff, all have been upset because she hasn't been expanding detention capacity fast enough to support the deportation, allegedly. Which goes to prove my point from earlier videos where I said that this is just another slavery operation. We're going to have basically free labor for all the jobs the immigrants been doing anyway. Yeah. But anyway, back to the lecture at hand. The other reason is that while married, Miss Family First Values has been having an affair with Corey Lewinsky.
Turns out two married MAGA stars have been having an affair for years, and it's been an open secret, but now confirmed according to multiple reports. So who is this? Well, it's married South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, 51 years old, who stresses her belief in family values, and Trump advisor Corey Lewandowski, who is, also married, and they began carrying on in 2019, if not before.
And there you have it. Now, the reason that this all matters is because what I'm hearing is that the secretary and the chief of staff has not been getting along with her. And they're saying that her running around playing cosplay, in her DHS role and trying to have this affair and trying to please the man at home too, is just taking up too much of her time. That's neither here nor there, but in the big scope of things, it's really an excuse to put the blame on why the deportation isn't going as planned. So his plan to try and take over for the fact that the economy is in the gutter, the jobs is in the gutter, the health plan is in the gutter, is to take sanctioned oil tankers. I made a video the other day saying I wonder what excuse he's going to come up with why he took the oil tankers. Well, it turns out he does have an excuse. Traders of sanctioned oil may prefer older tankers because the longevity of the sanctioned market is uncertain. One shipbroker reported that in 2022, there were over 600 secondhand tanker sales, a record amount, with many vintage tankers bought at elevated prices. One analysis finds that 43% of global fleet 697 tankers identified as carrying sanctioned oil is between 16 and 20 years old. The problem is the backlash is going to happen. Several countries have imposed economic sanctions on the United States in retaliation for US imposed sanctions, a practice that has occurred since the 1800s. Some of the most famous economic sanctions in the history of the United States are like the Boston Tea Party, or perhaps the steel sanctions of 2002 on China. Those are some of the more prevalent ones, just to give you an example. You see, in order for you to pick on a country that you can bully, like Cuba, Venezuela, Peru, places like that don't really have a big army, and we know we can steamroll them over, but they got big brothers and big sisters, China and Russia. Eventually, that's going to come back to bite us. So I want to let you know, because what I like to do is I like to break things down and learning terms for people that, maybe haven't been to college and just work a blue collar job. That's what I like to do. So I was having a conversation with my daughter yesterday, and she was like, you need to do more videos so that we can watch them where you just talk how you talk. You know what I mean? Lately, you've been using a lot of videos from the other, podcasters and what have you. But I like it when you just talk how you talk because I can understand it better. So I'm going to break it down in layman terms. You see, the United States gets to decide who gets sanctioned, usually for political reasons, like they want to change the president in Venezuela. They want to change the president in Cuba. They want to change the president in Peru. You know what I mean? Things like that. So they put sanctions to weaken their economy so they look bad. So we put sanctions on Venezuela. Now, there are this many sanctioned ships in the seas. Now, that number means you can pick on any boat at any time to seize, and it'll be totally legal according to the United States. But what happens when the people that want to receive this oil, whether it be a unsanctioned oil tanker or not, Russia, China, Iran, what do you think they're going to do to us? Time's up. That's right. They're going to sanction us. Of course they will, because they're going to consider this an act of war. And nobody wants to throw bombs, which is why we're opposing these threats off the coast of Venezuela, because he knows if he runs up in there, that's going against Congress. See, he has to get the approval of Congress. And the way you do that is you provoke. You keep doing stuff, like killing fishermen in the open seas, saying that they're drug boats and don't have not 1 kilo to show for it. Or even a name of who the people you were that blew up, even though Pete Hegseth said this.
We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented.
Hasn't released a name. Hasn't released a video of those 2 people getting blowed up in the ocean. But he knew exactly where they were, exactly where they came from, and exactly where they're going. Yeah, right. So when all this comes out in court, which won't be for another year or 2, you know what I'm saying? And he probably will be long gone by then, and Trump will not give a flying F about him. Of course not. But I just want to say that we're in this situation because of the $38 trillion deficit. Right now, that is $1.5 trillion in interest we're going to have to pay on that $38 trillion debt. And that is the reason why he's doing every move that he can to try and make up for this horrible, horrible economy. Let me tell you how bad it is. China just reported a $1 trillion surplus.
Of the Port of Los Angeles, which is the busiest port in the United States. And Gene, let's just start with where we began the program. The stunning number of a record the China record trade surplus of $1 trillion. Where are we with tariffs right now? I mean, are they starting to hit actual consumers even only now?
Yeah, they are, Aaron, and that's right. But we saw a huge run-up in imports to the United States, and especially through Los Angeles over the last 18 months, with folks trying to stockpile, build inventories as a hedge against tariffs. And at the same time, China and others were making deals without the United States on traditional U.S. exports.
We're going to report after January a $1 trillion deficit.
The bill for decades of easy money and political drift arrived with interest, and that interest is now big enough to rival the pillars of the federal budget. On paper, the United States still looks invincible, yet the numbers quietly say otherwise. Roughly $38 trillion in gross debt and a swelling interest tab that now outpaces defense. If that's not a warning shot, what is? But that wasn't the whole story. The interest squeeze. Please start with the most straightforward, most uncomfortable fact. Interest costs have muscled their way near the top of Washington's spending list, In FY 2025, net interest outlays were estimated at around $970 billion, larger than national defense, making interest the third largest federal line after Social Security and Medicare. That isn't a forecast. It's the bill already on the table, and projections show interest pressure persisting as debt rolls over at higher rates. When interest becomes a program unto itself, every other choice gets harder to fence.
Who's winning?